Today we're going to talk about the case Hazelwood versus Kohlmeyer that was decided on in 1988. And this case was largely about First Amendment student rights at a high school in St. Louis in 1987. And so this largely involved the students who wrote for the school newspaper, The Spectrum, in their Journalism 2 class. And it involved the principal, Robert E. Reynolds. And then Kathy Kohlmeyer was one of the students that actually took the case to court, and then 2 other former high school students were involved with the case as well. And so it originated in St. Louis, Missouri in 1987 at Hazelwood East High School. And the main idea behind the story was that you had students in this Journalism 2 class that wanted to publish civic articles in the Hazelwood East High School newspaper. And these articles were mainly about their peers' experiences with teen pregnancy and divorce, and the principal did not want these types of stories published in the newspaper. These types of, which could be kind of seen as maybe too heavy for some high school students to read, or just of a sensitive nature, especially since they were from students that went to school there. And so when the students gave the proofs of the articles to the principal, he decided not to allow these articles to be published, and he also did not tell the students before publication that they would not be published. And so when the students found out that their articles were not published, they claimed that their First Amendment rights had been violated, and they took the school to the first court case was the U.S. District Court for Eastern District of Missouri in St. Louis, and it ruled in favor of the school, stating that the school had the right to censor the student articles. And then the students appealed that decision to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit, and the Court of Appeals of the 8th Circuit reversed the ruling from the district court and sided in favor of the students, stating that the paper was a public forum that extended beyond the walls of the school. So they said that the students had the right to do what they did and publish what they wanted to publish, since it was a public forum. The school then appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and ultimately the court sided in favor of the school, stating that the school had the right to remove any information that might be deemed inappropriate for the school to have in their paper, or could be seen as an endorsement. And so ultimately, if it's going to be a reflection on the school, or if the school is seen as endorsing this material, then they can pull it, or they can prevent it from being published. So why does this matter? How does this impact students' rights nationwide? One of the reasons why this matters is because we've told students from a very, very early age that they have all of these constitutional rights that are protected, as American citizens. And we tell them this in school. They learn this in school. They've been told that they can say whatever they want. They can, petition. They can do all of these things, and it's protected by the Constitution. And we told them this in school. And so to have a school tell them that they can't say whatever they want is kind of a slap in the face. But not a lot of students are told about the precedent of this case. They don't realize that when you're publishing information on behalf of or in association with a school, that it also represents the school, that the school has the final say on what can ultimately be published, as set by Hazelwood and Kohlmeyer. And so when students don't understand this, and when they think they can publish whatever they want, and then they can't, they don't understand where the disconnect is. And so this matters to students because students have a lot to say. We've encouraged students to speak, to use their voices, to stand up for what they believe in. But even though they are in school, or when they are in school, they still should have that protection, with the understanding that if it's an association with the school in any way, it's also a reflection of the school. And that's what they don't understand. And why does that matter to administrators and school boards? It matters because their goal is to build and maintain a positive school culture and climate. And they want their students to express themselves. They want their students to be creative and to produce art and writing and, write for a school newspaper. But at the same time, if the school owns that entity, if the school is the parent of that organization, then everything is a reflection back on the school. And so the school has the obligation to monitor what is published and to make sure that it's going to be a positive reflection back on the school, and not to be seen as endorsing any specific agenda or movement. And so it's almost like the school wants to be neutral. They want to maintain this neutral ground. And at the same time, administrators and school boards also want to protect students' First Amendment rights, because they know if they don't, they can be sued for it, obviously. And so it's just a very, very fine line that administrators and school boards have to, it's a very fine tightrope that they have to walk to make sure that they are maintaining a positive representation of the school and not endorsing or not promoting material that is inappropriate, but also allowing students to write and publish and say what they want to say. And so what comes next, or what should happen for student rights based on this case? Students need their rights in school. Students need to be able to say what they want to say and do what they want to do. But there has to be some measure of proactivity from the school to remind students that they can't do 100% of what they want to say and do when they're in a school building or when they're part of a school organization, because that ultimately reflects back on the school. And especially when that information they're writing or saying out loud is inappropriate or disruptive or threatening to the educational environment, which goes back to the court case of Tinker versus Des Moines, that students don't shed their First Amendment rights at the door, but if what they're saying and doing becomes disruptive to the educational environment, then there has to be some measures that are taken to make sure that the educational environment is protected. I think schools can do a better job, especially in classes like journalism and English and government, and explaining what rights students have at school and what they don't. This is a perfect thing to go over in government class or in journalism, to talk about, this is a journalism class. We are producing this paper on behalf of the school, but whatever we write, ultimately, the school has the final say on if it's published or not. And that way, students have a better understanding of what they can and can't do within the school. And then they won't be as surprised when they are told, well, you can't publish this, or actually you need to change this in order for it to be published. And I think that just needs to be something that administrators and teachers, this goes into the next question of how do you balance the needs of school with the rights of students in a case like this. The school needs to maintain a positive, safe culture while also respecting students' rights. And that's so much easier said than done. But students' rights deserve to be acknowledged and observed as well. And so I think if administrators and teachers are proactive about reminding students, if you want to publish something on your own outside of school, on your own social media, on your own blog, you have the right to do that. But as far as if it's part of a school entity, the school has the right to censor that. And I had my own experience with this when I was in college. I wrote for my student newspaper when I was an undergrad, and one of our dormitories on campus had a really bad mold infestation, and I was the forum editor, which meant that I interviewed people and wrote mainly about opinion pieces, and had a lot of students coming to me asking me, will you come and interview people in our dorms about this mold problem and take pictures and ultimately put it in the paper? And so I did, and I was not aware that the term black mold is a deadly kind of mold, a lethal kind of mold. And I had used that phrase in my article, and when the article was published, the school pulled the paper off the stands. They wouldn't let the paper go to the stands. And the faculty advisor of the paper thought the article was fine, but because I had used the term black mold, that did not reflect well on the university. And because it was the university's paper, once I submitted the article, it became their property, and I wasn't allowed to publish it anywhere else. I wasn't allowed to post it anywhere else. And that was a really, really hard lesson to learn. And I looking back now, I should have gone to someone above the faculty advisor and probably gotten permission to do this, to write the story. But I was not aware of this precedent. I was not aware that I had limited First Amendment rights underneath the university or a school organization when I was writing for the paper. And if I had known that, my outlook on having the article pulled would have been very different at the time. And so I think this is something that administrators and teachers need to be more proactive about. That I was never taught this in high school. No one ever told me this. And so just the fact that, yes, students do have those rights, and those rights need to be observed, but at the same time, a school can't endorse and can't let students say whatever they want from a school platform. That's just inviting trouble for schools. And so this is, I think, the best solution for it, and how you balance this is that schools need to be more proactive. And going back to this Hazelwood and Kohlmeyer case, if those students had wanted to publish maybe not stories that were exactly related to teen pregnancy or divorce, but if they wanted to interview students, then maybe going to the principal and saying, hey, what are some things that if we wanted to write about would be acceptable for the school to put in the paper? And that could be a way that they could work around that. Or, like, students want to publish things on their own social media or on their blogs, then they have the right to do that. So yeah, I think the best way to acknowledge student rights is by letting them know how their rights change, how the scope of their rights change when they come into the school building. And once they are aware of that, then hopefully it's not so much of a surprise when those rights are taken away. Thanks for listening today.